So we now welcome on Shelley Klaes, the head coach of the JMU Lacrosse program, to the podcast for the first time. Shelley, thanks so much for taking the time.
Absolutely. Happy to be here with you boys.
Yeah, we're excited to have you on. Obviously, the program's had a ton of success in recent years. This year, 5-0 start, win over North Carolina in the opening game. How would you assess the early season schedule for your team?
I'm proud of the schedule that we've built over the years. And for us to have a familiar feeling with opening up with UNC is a part of that, right? You got to get started with a bang, so to speak. And for us, our girls to have the mentality now that they were the ones who set the tone in the offseason, that they wanted to win this game. And for them to have that kind of a lofty goal, I think sets the tone early. And I'm excited to see they actually followed through with the action.
Yeah, that's awesome. And right behind you is a banner for the national championship from 2018. And 2018 started with a win over UNC early on in that season. This year starting the same way, but kind of just an overarching question is, how have you had such sustained success with the program from winning a national championship in 2018? You made it back a tough loss last year to Syracuse, but had the firepower to maybe have another run. And then this year it looks like primed for yet another deep postseason run.
Well, I think that's literally what all us coaches are trying to do is find a way to experience that feeling of seniority again. Because a lot of times it takes special people to be able to have success and then to have repeated success when you have a dynamic where coaches leave and athletes leave, hopefully after 4 or 5 years, which we've benefited from. So I think that's part of the success. That turnover factor, I think, is really challenging for college coaches to have to manage. And so always finding the right people to be surrounded by. It does take a village. There's no way one person can orchestrate all of it on their own. And so for me, constantly finding the right people. When coaches leave, finding better coaches. When athletes leave, finding better athletes. And then I've been fortunate to have very consistent leadership above me. And so I think there's a lot of little pieces to the puzzle of the success we've had here at JMU.
That makes a ton of sense. How do you go about keeping players for 4 or 5 years, especially in sort of this new era of college sports where that seems like a challenge for pretty much everyone else?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the first thing that came to my head was, well, we're not trying to keep them happy. And I think that that's what a lot of people would think is happening for you to keep your athletes. This is an elite level program. We're working on trying to make our athletes feel empowered by the process itself, through the grind, feeling good about successes, but also feeling good about failures within the program, and that everyone's experience is going to be uniquely to themselves, from the players down to the coaches again. And so trying to not, even though we're all so competitive and we thrive on comparing and contrasting, and trying to not do so much of that within the own program, because we all are going to have different roles. And so I think that's a big part of my job as a head coach, is creating this environment where, regardless of their role, they feel like they're getting better every day and growing with the team. And that's how I think we can retain the athletes that are finding success. They still feel like they're getting something out of it. But then the athletes who are also doing the grunt work behind the scenes and are never stepping out on the field, they feel a part of it too. And so we're not losing the top or the bottom.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And excuse me, awesome insight. One of the players that has stuck around for a while decided to come back, use their last year of eligibility, Isabella Peterson. I mean, she has her name across the JMU records book. I think coming into this year, she already held the records for goals and all the fun, flashy numbers. And she's just gonna, just dominate and destroy every single one of the records even more. But what does it mean to have kind of one of your big time players that gets all of the headlines decide to come back and use that last year of eligibility?
Well, I think it speaks to the story, right? The Breeze did an article about her recently and keyed in on the fact that we were the only offer that came her way. And so I think we're trying to ingrain in these student athletes to remember your roots, and to make that a part of your value system and to never let your ego get too big for your own britches, so to speak, right? So Bella's a huge part of that. You know, she came here ready to work. She had uh, uh, you know, a little chip on her shoulder from the recruiting process. And we've been just trying to channel that energy into the right place. And she's had a great experience. So, you know, it feels good to take a program on your back like she has in her time here at JMU and to really catapult us back into the national scene.
Is there something you look for in the recruiting process for players like Bella who maybe go under recruited, but obviously have pretty tremendous potential?
Well, I think when you sit down in a field, the top 10%, everyone can see that. It's obvious. And so, yeah, you notice that. But then you also see who else is competing and which of those athletes do I feel could be better than the ones that the eye just draws to right away. And Bella was one of those players. And, you know, her size, whether or not she was going to continue to grow strength and speed, quickness, agility with that size, that was the big question. But her being a multi-sport athlete, having great training regimen off the field, you know, and then, you know, you meet her, right? She was just so determined. You know, I felt like she had a lot of the intangibles to reach her full potential.
And then this last game, kind of narrowing in on this season, you were without Peterson due to the red card she picked up against Towson, but Maddie Epke came on and did what Epke does, it seems like. What is it like having Peterson, and then when she's out for a game, you have Epke, and then just kind of this deep roster of talent, it seems like, that you can just kind of plug and chug, replace and see, and things keep rolling?
Well, that's why we were able to come up with these big results, right? You know, I think leading into the UNC game, everyone knew who Bella was, to your point. But who else did we have? And I think that Maddie has done a great job of changing the angles that she's dodging from. She's coming from more high than low. She's able to get down to net, so to speak, turn the corner really well on her defenders. And she's creating a nice little triangle vector with Isabella coming from the left side, Maddie coming from the right side, and then having Caitlin Morgan and Casey Knobloch coming from behind the goal, right? So you have just a really balanced offensive unit now that really puts a defensive unit, it stretches them to be able to have enough defensive players that can take away all of it. And depending, one or the other can step up game day, right? Maddie's shown she can do it multiple times, which has been great for us.
Yeah, no, the offense is insane at this point. The defense, a lot of young faces there. What have you seen from the development on that end? Seems like they've had some nice performances early.
Well, when you originally started talking about the success, you know, one of the things that came to my mind was COVID era and just how hard that was for every program to work through. And I think this concept of culture came out of it being really important again, right? And so, you know, one of the things that I thought we did a really good job with was working on positional flexibility, right? Making sure that everyone had a really good foundation of an understanding of what we were trying to do defensively. Even though we were zoned, we could move people around and not just have this one or two players for this one spot. And that mentality and practice regimen, I think, paired with the next man ready, which was another huge challenge that we had to overcome in athletics. The person that was practicing all week could just be gone all of a sudden, and the next person had to step in even if they didn't get the reps. It was crazy. And so now really taking those two concepts and putting it into a whole unit, right? So you have so many people graduate. We have 5 newcomers currently in this starting lineup. You know, a couple sophomores like Courtney Quirk with her just really fast feet, able to cover a lot of space, really helping with our ability to extend and get out on ball. But she's also got really great hands and takeaway ability. So you're seeing her break up a lot of play as well as clean up a lot of trash in the ground balls. Caitlin Bowden, sophomore, coming in the cage. And then you have your upperclassmen like Nikki Marshall, who got moved from more of the inside of our system to the outside. Alex Piracino stepping up and playing high with Quirk a lot of times. You know, and then the freshmen, right? Ava Bleckley coming in and owning that crease with Nikki, and Maddie Waybrett giving us legs and adjustability on the defensive end. She can come in and we can move any personnel around to clean up some things that we're seeing mid-game. So yeah, we're really loving the defensive unit itself. And then the middies are just they're covering a lot of ground for us. You'll see Taylor Marchetti, Maggie Clark, Bree Manella, Josie Powell coming all the way down to the crease to cover space, not just playing high. And so, you know, all the players are really extended in their roles, and I think they're playing well. It's been great to see.
That's awesome. And there's a lot of names there, but I want to back it up to Caitlin Bowden, the sophomore keeper. She's replacing Kat Buchanan, a fantastic keeper in her own right. And now all of a sudden it seems like Bowden, that's some big shoes to fill, but she's done a fantastic job this year. What have you seen out of the sophomore in the cage this year?
Well, I think it speaks to goalie world itself. Again, the practice environment that we have here, because you've seen that the last couple of years, right? You have Molly Doherty, who dominated the position for 6 years. That's a long time. And then, you know, Kat Buchanan, who sat and waited for her chance in her 5th year, finally gets the nod and steps up in 1 year and becomes a regional All-American, gets us back to the Elite 8, right? And then boom, the next year, right now, Caitlin Bowden, as a sophomore, is stepping in. And that was a really difficult decision for us to make. It wasn't like she was just, you know, the best on our team, on our roster. Goalie world's really competitive. So I think, you know, Adanya Moyer pushing, you know, Emily Evans pushing, puts Caitlin Bowden in a situation where she has to work every single day. And because of that uncomfortability, I think she's doing a great job of weathering the pressure of having to face these really high level teams, you know, as a first year starter.
That's awesome. Bennett, sorry to interrupt your next question, but I have to ask, this might be a dumb question. Goalie world. Is that what you call your goalie groom?
That's what we call our goal unit. Yeah. You know, Matt Snyder heads it up. Currently we have 3 goalies in goalie world, but anyone who might be injured and limited in some capacity always heads down to goalie world and helps us out in some capacity with shots, passes, tendencies from the opponents that we're going to face, and just helping our goalie unit get better. So yeah, goalie world, it's a big part of our practice regimen.
That's awesome.
Sounds like almost like a theme park, but I imagine the practices are not quite that same environment. I wanted to ask you talked about the grind and grit and those sort of things. What does a practice look like, and how do you develop sort of that mental toughness needed to be a great team?
Well, I think depending on the time of the year, it's very different. And I think that that's important to evolve, you know, depending on what the team needs. So right now, we might be doing a little bit more film, studying our opponent, studying our own selves, getting feedback from the last opponent, and tapering down in the actual workload and reps. You know, we might, the starters might be getting more reps than the non-starters. So the non-starters might have to do extra work on the side in their lifting, strength and conditioning regimen, and that's okay, right? High minute, low minute, and feeling empowered in those different roles throughout the year as different practices shake out. So yeah, I mean, a lot of skill focus right now, you know, a lot of system work, trying to make sure we understand the formation of the next, maybe the system that the offense is going to run, how that's going to stretch our zone system, and where we're going to need to work to apply pressure or, you know, recover. And so, you know, those are the types of things that you're seeing going on in our practices right now.
That's awesome. And my final question, kind of a broader one. Since 2020, things have been a little crazy, not only for JMU athletics moving from the Sun Belt for you guys from the CAA to the American Athletic Conference, but also you're dealing with COVID. But through that time, recruited extremely well and has essentially reloaded to become a national title contender this year. What has that journey from 2020 to today been like for you as a coach?
I think in the world of athletics, every year is different. You have to redo your work every year. So I kind of feel like it's been a challenge the last 2 to 3 years, but I feel like the entire 28 years of college athletics has been a challenge. So it's no different. It's just evolving with the times. So now the challenge is, mental health is way more part of the conversation. Culture is a way more part of the conversation. Social media is way more a part of the conversation, and how we manage those different factors. You're talking about the portal and recruiting, and what is the message that is out there about our program, and what we're focusing on and what we care about, and how we're dealing with all of this. And I think that luckily for us, some of those factors have always been a part of the conversation. And so nothing's changed really for us. We've always cared about mental health, a balanced perspective within our program, even though we're one of the best programs in the country. Culture has always been a part of who we are, developing the strong woman before the laxer, creating that championship character first, and then the portal, our ability to sustain the ebbs and flows, the ups and downs of the year, how we manage our people, how our people feel supported through JMU athletics. I think JMU has set us up really well for managing that, and recruiting with the new facilities at JMU, and us moving into the new conferences, having ESPN Plus access, people actually being able to watch our team play. I mean, that makes a huge difference in people's ability to understand how and why JMU is beating these Power 5 programs. They can see it themselves. They're not just reading the story. So I think that, JMU has grown enough to be able to help us, evolve with the sport and with the times that college athletics is working through. It's not easy, but luckily for us, we've been grounded in the right things all along.
Awesome. I think that's all I've got too, but appreciate the time so much and all the insights.
Well, I appreciate you guys helping us continue to get the story out there. We're very proud of what we're doing here, as our sport grows, and our athletic department grows. So thanks for having us on.
Thank you.